All right, here we are. Here we are at our weekly hypnosis talks with me, Jisea, and the great Pete. And today we have decided to talk about questions that make no sense yet lead to results, specifically in hypnotic change work. And I was just mentioning that I worked with someone yesterday where at one point, we're going through their issues and, just identifying some things. And then I just said, well, what is that like an animal as an animal? And she just said, that's a really bizarre question. And, you know, and I said, yeah, but just first thing that comes to mind. And it was the very first thing. And, it turned out to be such a gift. And had she allowed the mind to think that it was bizarre and question it and try to find an animal that made sense, it would have been so different. And then that ended up really becoming having more meaning than, this person could have ever, uh, conjured up on their own. And so it just led me to this topic today of how often we ask questions, especially in this kind of like hypnosis and change work, where you can even sometimes word it in a way that doesn't totally make sense, but it forces the mind to find an answer. And there's almost like a creativity and um a make believe and a play that comes in by having to find something in something that doesn't make sense in the brain. So that's like our plan, what to talk about today. And what do you think about that, Pete? I
Yeah,
know you do a lot of work with that.
I like it, right? Because this is one where I say, even for myself, probably maybe 2 weeks ago, could be three. I had a woman come in, and she's very much in the metaphysical world of things, right? The way she treats her body, her mind, um, but she felt stuck, right? And so, working through just her chakras, I said I want to give each of them an animal of what they look like, and they're all different. They all had their own unique abilities, their own capabilities, right? Very personal to her. And all we did for the entire session is let them talk to each other to see where there's this, you know, disconnect and where she wants to go. And like you said, profound things come up, right? And it's amazing, like I say, how simple it is, but complex at the same time. Because consciously, yes, they are animals. Unconsciously, they are emotions, they are characteristics, they are attributes. And because of that reason, the conscious mind can't comprehend the power behind them. But change doesn't happen in the conscious mind, it happens in our unconscious mind. And so when we can really get to what works for the unconscious mind, we can begin to let go of what the conscious mind can and can't comprehend. You know,
Right.
and that's what
That,
I love about this.
me too. And also, for a long time with, being told over and over again that, the subconscious has everything, it's recording everything, excuse me. And that it's a lot of what dictates our daily life, whether we know it or not. And I was learning how to understand that as truth. And I've been noticing it every time that I drive. How when I think about where I have to go, I second guess it. But if I just follow my body, I'm like, my body knows. I don't mean all the time, not in a place I'm unfamiliar with, but a place that I'm semi familiar with. And that's been a really kind of fun, simple way to feel my body. Like it kind of like knows the groove of like the ruts or the groove that we go.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, it's this direction, these roads, it takes us to that highway, and then we go there, opposed to like, okay, hold on, was it left or right? I remember one time we did this, and you know and to just like feel um that as an example of just being kind of, driven by that subconscious, that memory. The difference between this memory and then just kind of this memory here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as the animals too, that was the experience with this client yesterday. It's like, I mean, birds, what do they represent? They represent freedom. They represent being able to fly. They represent, this certain kind of, bird is, known to be smart, and, they partner, and all of these things. And then what's so fun too about these questions, and then, these answers that come, is more often than not, the person goes, huh, that's interesting. Wow. It unlocks, it opens, it intrigues something that I feel like you often can't get by just telling someone something, or asking their intellect. They get
Yeah.
surprised by their own self, and then it gives them a gift.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
The way, so I say the hypnotist that really started all of, I say, the animals, as we know it today, was David Groves.
Mm.
And it's fascinating because consciously, like if we go, hey, I'm trying to accomplish this, we go, I don't know the steps to get there. I don't know what to do. Right. And then you hear it so often, your unconscious mind knows what to do. Right. And we get stuck in that. Well, does it? Like, I've never done it before. How could it know? And this is where, if we think of animals as monsters, as scenes, as rooms, right? Any part of our imagination, it's just a metaphor, right? And so, like, let's say I wanted to build a community around me, right, of like-minded individuals that spans into the thousands. Consciously, I might go, I have no idea how to do that, right? And then you go to the person, well, no, just trust your unconscious mind. It knows, right? And they're going to go, I don't know. How could it know? But when you go, think of an animal that has that community. And you go, well, it's ant, right? So first thing that popped in my mind, ants all work in unison, right? They're committed. They all have their part, their role in the community, right? Just on that, my mind just goes, oh, so if I want to have people around me, they got to have roles, right? They got to have purpose. They can't be there just to sit around. They need something to do, right? That's how my mind sees building a community. But it couldn't see that before, you know?
Yeah, and that's so interesting because the first thing that came to my mind were like lions. And, if you want to investigate that, it's like the women hunt, the men protect, but they sometimes eat the babies. There's a lot of like relaxing going on in the savannah,
Yeah.
and some snuggling, according to National Geographic. But
Yep.
it is so interesting what pops up, and then, like what comes from that, and gives you some really interesting insight.
Yeah.
What are some other things, as far as like, by saying like, what kind of animal is that? What are some other techniques that someone could use, either as a practitioner or
Yeah.
as someone trying it for themselves?
This is where I've learned the imagination is your limit, because there is no right or wrong. It can be an object, right? You could be like, what object signifies a community, right? It could be, I say, like, pops into my mind is staples, right? When they're new in a package, right? They're all linked together. They're stuck there, right? It could be a scenery, right? Where a scene for me, if I'm like, oh, what scene represents like a community-based thing? It reminds me of movies where maybe like it's Aladdin, where they're all just in the city and you got the market people and you got the people buying and you got the guards, and right, you have people. And again, like, it's interesting from my mind, it all goes really stems back to the same thing, They all have purpose. They all have their roles. They all have, a reason to be next to the one they're next to. But it's going to be very personal for everyone. Now, when we get that scenery of like the result, let's say, we need to also have a scenery of where we're currently at, right? So you get the both sides of the coin. And so let's say I felt really alone and I wanted to build that community around me of people of like-mindedness, right? Right now, I may feel like a lone wolf, right? Just in it by myself. I don't need anyone else, right? And I might be struggling, and right, I get to go, well, what does the ants know that the wolf doesn't know? Now they're communicating, right? Now they get to teach each other of something. And ultimately what will end up happening is the wolf will either go, I'm happy being alone, and the community falls away. Or the ants overtake it and they become the mindset, right? The emotions, the actions that we take at an unconscious level, or something new is born, a wolf ant hybrid per se, right? That brings the best of both worlds,
Yeah.
And they're all right.
Right. And also, I mean, you could get different answers. You could ask the same question today and tomorrow and still get equally valid and interesting pieces that will continue to grow, right? And kind of inform. So for people who would be interested in doing it themselves, for example, if they don't yet have a practitioner or in between sessions, you want to brainstorm some things that people could do. I was thinking right off the bat, like, I wonder if you could write out a situation, like one sentence or a question, or even like an attribute that you want to work on or something like that. And then ask yourself some questions. What kind of animal is it? What does it look like? Where does it live? Stuff like that. And I don't know, this is just one idea of, what do you think about that?
Yeah. It's one where I say the first step is you need to know where you want to be, right? Not where you think you can be, not where you think you're limited to being, but your ultimate, no holds, right? If you could have everything perfect, you need to have that image first, right? Because without it, you're only going to get what you put in. And I feel like this is a big part a lot of people try to skip, but you can't, right? Because if we settle in this moment, everything else will settle with it, right? But if we go big, everything else has to go big too. One of my mentors, he was like, Pete, whatever image you have, double it. Because he goes, chances are, whatever dream you have is just your limited thoughts of like, this is what I believe I can reach. And then you go, you double it and you're like, oh my God, that's impossible. That's where you really want to be, right? But he also said, at that moment, the moment you double it, you only have to go halfway.
So what if you have a hard time even getting that answer? What would be some questions that don't make sense that might be able to lead you to a good result of knowing a bit more where would be?
Yeah, with I say knowing, sometimes it takes time, right? We have to be willing to really sit there and go, like, if I had unlimited money, what would I have in my life? If I had unlimited love, who would be in my life? If I had unlimited time, what would I do with that time? Right.
So what I'm hearing in this moment is to take off any limitations. So, for example, if you're still trying to define what that ultimate place that you want to be in, like, write down what first comes and then maybe investigate it to see if there's any limitations. And then re-ask the question with, out
And
that limitation, what would it be? So maybe there's some layers to really get to it by
yeah,
identifying the limitations.
and understand like a big part of this is with our mind. You have to think of it like it's going to do a checkbox, right? Because if you go, let's say I want more love, right? And it's your birthday and you go on Facebook and you get those 100 comments of people saying, happy birthday. Your mind will go, check, we got more love. And it will stop trying to go after getting more love. Because it'll like, I filled that one, right? Because it's very, I call it surface level. It's not deep. It's not really what you mean by love. Because the moment that happens, you go, yeah, but that's not what I meant. It's like, but to your mind, that's exactly what you said. And so you get to look at it. It's one where I'll say I had a client where talking to her, because again, most people don't think about this. She goes, I just want to be better. Right? How often do we hear that? I just want to be better. And I went, awesome. I said, you're better now. Done. Right? And she's like, well, that's not what I mean. And I'm like, oh, well, what did you mean by being better? She's like, well, I wanted to get my degree in this. I want to have a baby. I want to get into, a healthy relationship and blah, blah, blah. Right? A whole bunch of list of actual things, because now the mind won't go, yeah, like I woke up in a good mood. Better, check. It'll go, hey, I woke up in a good mood. That means I can use this good mood to get closer to my degree. Okay, now it's moving towards something.
Right. I mean, I wonder, this seems kind of like jumping the gun, but could you say like, I want to be better. And then, you could say what kind of better is this? And then what kind of animal would this better be?
You
could maybe go do that route too, as far as within the topic of questions that don't make sense. It's like,
so you can be
better as an animal or better as an object, or
and so like this is where for different people I'll do different things. Sometimes I'll do it as a painting. What painting does this look like?
Nice.
What animal does it look like? If it's good, I typically make it a friendly object. If it's something where like I feel stuck, I'll usually turn it into like a monster or something dark, right?
Okay. So if you're trying to, just as far as like, for people who are watching, if you're a practitioner, then it's something to think about, like, as you explore, ways, sometimes when we ask these questions that seem like they make no sense, and they certainly don't in that logical mind, it gives them an option to just wonder what in the world you're talking about. And that wonderment and all of that connects in, right? Outside of the logical mind and underneath, trying to find an answer in a different sort of way.
Right. Because if we think about like our mind from our conscious to our unconscious, our conscious mind is full of limitations, right? It's the part of us that keeps us where we're realistically at, because it goes, well, I can't do that, right? We typically go, well, that must come from the unconscious, but it's the conscious mind that seeps the information down, right? And so if we stop it in the conscious mind, it will drain out of the unconscious mind, if that makes sense.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. So like if I believe I'm not deserving of, I don't know, a healthy relationship, right? I have all these things coming in visually. I hear, I smell, I taste, I experience that say the opposite. But my conscious mind blocks those from entering my unconscious mind, right? However, if I go, man, like, of course I'm a horrible partner because I don't do this and I don't do that, that's when my conscious mind will be like, yeah, let's send that down to the unconscious mind, because it reaffirms that feeling, right? But if I stop sending those undeserving feelings, experiences down, and I start sending down the good ones, it will drain out of the unconscious mind for the negative, and it'll start filling up the unconscious mind with the positive. When that happens, it's it's kind of like a nice steady process where it's like, I guess say the positives down here, the negatives up here, it'll start to go like this, and then it gets even, and then it reverses, But it has to take that time, and sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's longer, right? But it has to do that swap, And that's where I say the animals, the pictures, they all come in handy because they're allowing you to go, if I acted like, the lone wolf, right? I can only get those experiences accepted into my unconscious mind through my experiences. If I go with the ant mentality, I get to go, okay, as that absorbs in, I get to see how when I meet people, I can give them a role. When I meet people, I can see how we can be symbiotic, how we can work together. That will start getting absorbed in. Now, consciously, it makes no sense. But the unconscious mind recognizes it's the emotions and the experiences of the ant that change everything to let go of the experiences of the wolf.
Well, now I just have to say, as an example, and we're actually going to wrap it up in a minute here for our just little 20-minute weekly things. But something that could be interesting too is to maybe if you identify, for example, the ant mentality or the lone wolf mentality, a fun thing might be able to see your situation, imagine it in the first thing that comes, and then imagine it as something else. So say you get like ant, lone wolf, anteater is the first thing that came to me, and monkey. And it's like, and then maybe try to take on those qualities that you find within that animal for like a day or a moment with the social interaction or something, and like see how it goes. It's just an idea of ways that you can play with like taking on those characteristics of these animals that showed up within your imagination and your exploration. And there's a chance that there could be some wisdom there.
Yeah. And so I'll say, like, I worked with people with procrastination on this, right? And it's funny how even the animals that they choose as like the action takers, as the self-starters, they rest, right? And so a big part of what I do is once you have the animal, you build where it lives, right? If it's a lion, right, it's in the savannah, your mind has a picture maybe of that one shady tree, right? And the lions are kind of laid out on it and they're panting, and you get the gazelles running by, and then they're like, oh, I'm hungry. They get up and they do it. Then they come back and they rest, right? With that, like, people can recognize, they go, oh, well, even as a self-starter, even as an action taker or a person who gets stuff done, I can still rest. Resting doesn't mean I'm procrastinating,
Yeah.
And the awarenesses will creep in. Sometimes at such a deep level that they don't even consciously recognize that they're making changes,
Right.
Because their mind is going, yeah, like, I want more of this. But when you build up the scene and you go through days of that animal to really understand what makes that animal that represents whatever, your mind is absorbing every metaphor, every feeling, every action that it needs to feel that way.
And also when I hear you say that, I think it's a good reminder for all of us to remember that imagination, imaginative play, that's not just for the children. That's an incredible innate ability and gift for ourselves that we tend to lose as we grow up. But as adults, it's an incredible tool for us to get to know ourselves and to get ourselves more to where we want to be. Yeah. Well, I think we should talk about that more next week, maybe just, the scientific evidence around imagination and play, and even the, a play and imagination as it's been and is current around the world, how it's used and its importance. That would be fun.
I think that would be good. I like that one.
Be a fun topic. So, well, thank you to everyone who watched today and will watch later. As always, always contact us if you have any questions. We love questions, and we'll answer them to the best of our ability. And thank you, Pete, for being here today. And until then, we hope everyone has a great week.
Thank you.